And we're back, everybody. We're going to be talking about new empires in Arabia, India, Southeast Asia, and then skipping on over to South America and discussing the Aztecs and the Inca. The Aden and the Red Sea in Arabia. So, Aden is located in modern day Yemen. And a local legend states that Aden may be as old as human history itself. And many believe that Cain and Abel are also buried in this city. In 1175 BCE, the city was rebuilt in a very solid form, and ever since, Aden became a popular city that attracted sailors and merchants from Egypt, Gujarat, East Africa, and even China. Some historians believe that Persians formed the majority of Aden's population in the 10th century. The city had enough rainfall to produce wheat for export, and its location made it a central transit point for trade from the Persian Gulf, East Africa, and Egypt. Aden's merchants prospered on this trade and built what appeared to many to be a very wealthy and impressive city. The common interest in trade from various peoples and religions of the Indian Ocean basin allowed the city to thrive in relative peace. Occasionally, violence did sometimes break out. That happens. And a great example is when Christian Ethiopia fought with the Muslims of the Red Sea coast over control of trade. But for the most part, peace prospered because everybody had a common interest. In 1421, China's Ming Dynasty Yongle Emperor ordered a principal envoy to go to the city of Aden. And it was actually led by Zheng He's fleet. The envoys boarded 3 treasure ships and set sail from Sumatra to the port of Aden, just in a way to make friends, show their wealth, because why not? But moving on, India's Gujarat and the Malabar coast. The state of Gujarat prospered from Indian Ocean trade, and they exported cotton, textiles, and indigo in return for gold and silver. Gujarat was not simply a commercial center, it was also a manufacturing center that produced textiles, leather goods, carpet, silk, and other commodities. Gujarat's overseas trade was dominated by the Muslims, but Hindus also benefited. Calicut and other cities of the Malabar coast exported cotton, textiles, and spices and served as clearinghouses for long-distance trade. The cities of the Malabar coast were unified in a loose confederation whose rulers were tolerant of other religions and ethnic groups. And when your city is built on trade, when it's built upon goods coming and going, you really want to be tolerant of one another. It's good business. Just saying. So just take a focus on Gujarat as well as the cities along the Malabar coast. In Southeast Asia, the Strait of Malacca was the principal passage from the Indian Ocean to the South China Sea. So as you can see, the up-close version, but easiest way to get from place to place, guys. Do you really want to go all the way around? Or boom, boom. Just saying. In the 14th century, a gang of Chinese pirates preyed upon the strait, nominally under the control of the Java-based kingdom of Majapahit. But in 1407, the forces of the Ming dynasty crushed these Chinese pirates. The Muslim ruler of Malacca took advantage of this to exert his domination over the strait and to make Malacca into a major port and the center of trade. Architecture, learning, and religion. Commercial contacts and the spread of Islam led to a variety of social and cultural changes in which local cultures incorporated changed ideas, customs, and architectural styles from other civilizations. Africa and India mosques are great examples of the synthesis of the Middle Eastern and local architectural styles. In the field of education, the spread of Islam brought literacy to African peoples who first learned Arabic and then used the Arabic script to write their own languages. In India, literacy was already established, but the spread of Islam brought the development of a new Persian-influenced language, Urdu, and paper-making technology. As it spread to Africa, India, and Southeast Asia, Islam also brought the study of Islamic law and the administration and Greek science, math, and medicine. Timbuktu, Delhi, and Malacca were three new centers of Islamic learning. Islam spread peacefully, forced conversions were rare. Muslim domination of trade contributed to the spread of Islam as merchants attracted by the common moral code and laws of Islam converted. And as Muslim merchants in foreign lands established households and converted their local wives and servants, you also have a merger of different cultures. The Islamic destruction of the last center of Buddhism in India contributed to the spread of Islam in that country as well. Islam brought social and cultural changes to the communities that converted, but Islam itself could be changed, even if only temporarily, in Africa, India, and in Indonesian societies. And again, a great example of how the Islamic religion was altered a bit is looking at the travels of Ibn Battuta and what he describes in Mali. Social and gender distinctions. The gap between elites and the common people widened in tropical societies as the wealthy urban elites prospered from the increased Indian Ocean trade. Slavery increased in both Africa and India. An estimated 2.5 million African slaves were exported from the Sahara and the Red Sea between 1200 and 1500. More were shipped from the cities of the Swahili coast. Most slaves were trained in specific skills. In some cases, hereditary military slaves could become very rich and powerful. Other slaves worked hard at menial jobs like copper mining, and particularly women were employed as household servants and entertainers. The large number of slaves meant that the price of slaves was quite low. And there's not much information on possible changes in the status of women in the tropics. Some scholars speculate that restrictions on women were eased somewhat in Hindu societies. Nevertheless, early arranged marriage was the rule for Indian women, and they were expected to obey strict rules of fidelity and chastity. Women's status was generally determined by the status of their male masters. However, women did practice certain skills other than child rearing, such as cooking, spinning, pottery making, and clothing production. It is difficult to tell what effect the spread of Islam might have had on women, but it is clear that in some places, such as Mali, Muslims did not adopt the Arab practice of veiling and secluding women, and women actually had an increased number of rights under Islamic law. And we've talked about that before with requirement of inheriting half of what their brother does, being allowed to own their own property. All right, so now we're gonna completely change gears, and just so we can do that and you can see the map of where we're going. So we were here and here and here, and now we're jumping right along here because we're going to start talking about the Aztecs and the Incas, because we are talking about southern empires, southern seas. We just didn't specify where. So the Aztecs, you've heard about the Aztecs. You've heard about their rise and their fall, I'm sure. For now, we're just talking about their rise. The Aztecs were originally a northern people, clan-based social organization. And what I find very interesting is what the Aztecs are very well known for, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Moon, and the rituals that went on there. They didn't even make those. Somebody else built them, and the Aztecs showed up and they were just there. We'll talk about that later. Actually, I have a picture of that. We'll talk about it. But anyway, moving on. They established the city of Tenochtitlan around 1325, and they developed a system of government that is run by a king, and the king eventually would be treated as a god. Gender division of labor was distinct yet complementary, and warfare increased male power. Females maintained control over the household and market, and they work as teachers and priestesses, so women actually still retain quite a bit of power, although that power does depend on the role of their husbands. The kings increased the wealth and power by territorial conquest. The Aztecs were incredibly fierce warriors. Men were trained to be soldiers, and the Aztecs were pretty much an unstoppable force to be reckoned with. As the empire grows, commoners lose their ability to influence political decisions. Inequalities in wealth grow very, very, very severe. There is an extreme difference between commoners and the nobles. Aztecs increased agricultural production by undertaking what we'll call land reclamation projects. Basically, they begin building what's called a chinampa, and that is a floating garden on the lake. And this provided very fertile soil. This is also why the city, the modern day Mexico City is slowly sinking, because the Aztecs built their capital on the lake. And then when the conquistadors came and destroyed the capital and built over the capital, they then built their capital over the capital built on the lake. We'll talk more about that later on when we discuss maritime technology, the fall of the Aztecs as well. So we do talk quite a bit about this later on. Merchants were distinct and subordinate to the political elite who controlled long-distance trade. Technology of trade was simple. There were no wheeled vehicles, draft animals, or money. Goods were carried by human porters, and it's a trade barter system. And the Aztecs were very polytheistic. Most important was the sun god. I'm not even going to try. We'll talk about Quetzalcoatl later, though, and why he plays such a large role. And their sun god required a diet of human hearts. And these were supplied by human sacrifice, and human sacrifice increased tenfold over time. So take a look where the Aztecs are located. Some of the more famous temples, Aztec artwork, and what the city looked like. The Inca. So, Inca Empire location. The Inca were a small chiefdom in Cuzco until the leaders consolidated political authority and began a program of military expansion. The Inca survived the Aztecs a bit longer, but their power, or how long they were in power, is considerably shorter. And the key to Inca wealth was their ability to develop a strong military and use it to broaden and expand the traditional exchange system. The Inca used the mita labor system to form their armies. Basically, it is a system of forced labor for a set period of time. They maintained religious institutions, and this mita labor system to form their armies was also used to build the capital city. The Inca generally left local rulers in place as they conquered, controlling them by means of military garrisons and taking the heirs to the Cuzco as hostages. Isn't that great? You can rule your own little area, but we're going to take your son hostage to the capital city of Cuzco for a while. Be good. Each king, as the new king was crowned, to prove himself, he had to conquer new territory. And if you couldn't do that, then you were not meant to be king. So off you go. The capital city of Cuzco was laid out in the shape of a puma, and its buildings were constructed of stone laid together without mortar. Cuzco's palaces and very richly decorated temples were the scenes of rituals, feasts, sacrifices of textiles, animals, other tribute goods, but only the occasional human. Attainments of the Inca Empire included astronomical observation, weaving, copper and bronze working, and gold and silver working. They did not rely on extensive record keeping, but did keep track of bureaucratic records with a system of knotted cords called quipus. The Inca did not introduce new technology, but they made efficient use of their existing technology. Inca domination resulted in increased wealth, but reduced levels of local autonomy as they do lead those local rulers in charge. The elite fell into a civil war in 1525. Inca control was weakened, and the civil war is what actually allowed Pizarro to come in, take over, and decimate the Inca. So again, their territory. and some Inca artwork. So children of the Inca tribe, and then some of the Inca ruins. Also a place that I'm going to go someday. All right, we're going to wrap it up there. If you have any questions, shoot me an email. And as always, guys, have a great night. Cheers.